the People's Candidate Forum. Joining us now is small business entrepreneur and author, Julio Pabon, candidate for Congress in District 15. Thank you for your interest in representing the community. Let's begin. I will start off with an icebreaker question. Please share a 1 or 2 word intention you hold for today's interview.
Education and networking.
Thank you.
The first question is, the South Bronx has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 outbreak. With public health officials forecasting a potential second wave, what will you do if you are hired to respond to this ongoing crisis?
Well, I don't know if you know the calendar, but if I was to be hired by Nos Quedamos, I will work on this the next day I get hired. But if I have to be elected, I won't do anything until 2021 because you have to be sworn in before you do anything. But the issue is that, there's a lot of science that's basically saying about a second wave. But the same science has also said some things about the number of people that would be affected and dying. And some pundits have taken that to say, hey, it didn't go to the extreme that you did to be able to have what you wound up doing in terms of lockdown. So you have a balance there. And that's going to be very difficult in terms of trying to define exactly what to do. But I'm going to tell you what I know for sure, because I've been living in this community since I was 4 years old. I was the only candidate that put something out, not once, but twice. When AOC was getting all the publicity about Elmhurst Hospital, I said, with all due respect, I support the sister, but CNN goes after celebrities. And they were focusing on Elmhurst that had a high level of coronavirus infections and deaths. But I kept on saying, if you don't pay attention to the South Bronx, that has the highest level of, in terms of, other the illnesses that we have, we're one of the most sickest boroughs in terms of ailments. We have some of the worst conditions, and we have an overcrowdedness. And we also have the highest number of public housing NYCHA. So if you know all of this, and you also know that 80% of the people that live in NYCHA are working people that before nobody paid attention to because those were service workers. All of a sudden they became essential workers. Those people had to come out to work. But if you go to any housing complex, you find that one elevator might not be working, still 2 elevators might not be working. So people are cramped up and caught in. So the Bronx went from 4, 3, 2, 1 in terms of right now, Morrisania and Mott Haven, the highest number of people that are being affected. So we need to do a lot in terms of education and being able to bring out that information, not only about staying healthy by social distancing and dealing with the whole question of in terms of testing, but we got to do a lot more testing. And it has to be testing that is not just once and goes away. My grandson, 25 years old, tested positive. We brought him upstairs. He stayed 14 days quarantined. He was okay. He went back to home to Massachusetts. My daughter called me yesterday. 2 tests, he tested positive. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to work out, and testing is very important. So those are some of the things that I would focus on immediately, which is the issue of the poverty level here. People have to go to work. You can't change that. Either you give them more money so they don't have to go to work, or you're going to have to develop something so you can continue to test people and being able to work with the issues. Like, remember the first testing? I wrote a press release on that. 2 places in the Bronx, Lehman College and Co-op City. You needed a car and you needed an appointment. How many people could make an appointment and get a car to get tested? And that's how they treated our community, because they always forget who we are. They just don't care.
Thank you.
In regards to criminal justice reform and jails, Congressman Jose Serrano has stood with a large contingent of community members who oppose the city's plan to build a new jail in Mott Haven. What is your position on the plan, which would put the new jail on a plot of land already earmarked by the community for an affordable housing development? And what have you done, or what will you do to advance your position?
You're hitting me on a very spot that's very dear to me, because criminal justice system, I was the person partly responsible for the development of an organization called Discovery for Justice because of some abuse that happened to my son about 11 years ago. And the fact is that right after that, I helped start an organization called Discovery for Justice, where the blindfold law took effect, which is if you got arrested, they didn't have to give evidence at time of arraignment. They gave it at time of trial. Everybody knows that trial takes about 2 years, 2.5 years. So if you are a person that doesn't have the resources, guess why Rikers is full? A lot of those people are innocent. My son was innocent, but had to wait 2.5 years and then to get cleared to basically, we sued the city and he won an allotment of money. And that's why he's now in California working for Spotify and not here in New York working me on my campaign. But anyway, the bottom line is that this issue with the jails, I bring it back because everybody's talking about, with the last debate we had, the council people were all praising each other because they were, supporting the fact that they should close Rikers. I don't think there's any argument about anybody who knows anything about jails to close Rikers. But where I have an argument is with those people who are running and they're all praising each other, that then the jails come into our communities and they can give it any name they want: enhancement, containment. They don't have to put prison or jail. But the bottom line is the South Bronx does not need more containment, halfway houses, jails, work release programs. We have enough of that. I fought very hard for the youth center when they closed Spotford and they were bringing, and they have it over there on St. Anne's Avenue. Because of the fact, as a teacher, as a person who taught school, I can tell you that every day our children are experiencing over 1,000 negative actions that are coming in, either through their eyes, through their ears, or through the feelings that they feel. As a teacher, I can tell you that we don't need more negative. When a kid walks by a prison, as many flowers as you put in front of it, as many designs that you put in front of it, it's a prison. And that's not what our kids need to see. That's number one. Number two, I take it further. Nobody talked about this, but I like to bring it out because you ladies and Joe, you guys are very, very, investigative. I said, follow the money. Don't you think that the same amount of money, which, by the way, what they're spending to build a prison here is more than they built Yankee Stadium for, okay? So you're spending that much money for all these boroughs. You could not have built another jail in the island that could be with all the bells and whistles you wanted. No, you know why? Because they want Rikers Island to become the next Roosevelt Island. Follow the money.
We have to move on to the next question for the sake of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julio. I have a quick, what we call quick response question for you. Please complete the following sentence. Today, I want to make the world
a much more loving and less fearing place.
Thank you.
Thanks. A question about public housing. Residents of NYCHA have been facing deplorable conditions for decades due to federal underfunding. What will you do to fix public housing with less public funding available than ever before because of the current economic crisis?
Again, another one of my favorite topics, because my mother-in-law has been living in Lincoln Housing, public housing, 109th Street, for 45 years. I'm not new to public housing. Some of my best friends are in either John Adams, when we've seen each other, or in Melrose, where I go frequently to see two of my friends. And I remember living on Colwell Avenue in the tenements. And I remember the housing projects behind us, St. Mary's houses. I remember a time when we would do anything to get into public housing because it was the only place you had heat and hot water. To get into public housing in that period in the 60s, it was like you moved up in life, moving on up. And it went from that type of relationship to where it's at now. I think that is horrendous. And the fact that we have a bloated system in city, basically run by the city to run this, it's atrocious. The fact that we have a person who's the head of NYCHA now, that we're paying basically a part-time job, or close to $300,000, and they fly him in every Monday and he leaves every Friday, and you and I are paying for his apartment and for his travel, and he lives outside? No. One of the things that I've been very strong on is we should turn NYCHA over to the residents. And there's an organization called Occupy NYCHA. The president is Carmen Quiñones. They endorse me. One of the few endorsements I get. I don't get endorsements from unions. I don't get endorsements from progressive people, but I get endorsements from people in the community, in the streets, who are doing the right thing. They endorse me. You know why? Because I support their plan. Their plan is to turn all of the NYCHA housing complexes into cooperatives and let the people who live in them run them, earn from them, and be able to do the contracts for them. Because I work for the city of New York, and I can tell you, Don't you think it's something strange that that always you have certain consistent things in the housing complex? You have the elevators always broken. Listen, if you had a house and you had an elevator or machine and it constantly gets broken, either your wife or somebody in your family is getting a kickback from the fact that they keep on giving the same contracts, or you're totally incompetent. So therefore, you know, one of the things that I would do is I want to audit NYCHA's budget. Where did all that money go? And at the same time, work on a project to bring in economic development, because if we have to refit NYCHA, we can be able to do it in a more with a green economy. So we'll be able to create jobs. And when you give people ownership of an apartment, guess what happens? The Bronx went from less than 8% of the population in our district owns their own residence. It goes immediately much higher, which means there's equity now, because now you have an apartment and you can take the equity to the bank and perhaps be able to help your son get out of New York City like I did. But my son went through a situation with New York City Police Department, but you can actually give your son some money to start, or your daughter to start a hair salon business. Or now we have money in our midst. So it's not just housing, it's also economic development.
Sorry to interrupt, Julio. We have to move on for the interest of time.
I'm sorry. You know, as a professor, man, you know, when you get me on a question, I start to preach and I start to teach. So stop me anytime you want.
Excellent. So the next question is about a similar topic, affordable housing. Who is it really affordable for? So community members, as you know, have embraced the concept of community land trust, which would take property off the speculative real estate market and enable folks to develop deeply affordable housing. What specific actions would you take to ensure affordable housing and home ownership are tangible things, attainable things for folks in our community?
I would like to just dovetail off what I just said. The majority of the people in this district, less than 8%, own their own residence. I am one of the lucky ones, and I only own this one after being here since 1956, not here, but in the South Bronx, was after I was 50 to get my own property. Less than 8% of the people own their property. My son graduated from Wesleyan, had a great job, and he couldn't get an apartment here because he made a little bit too much. I had another individual who also graduated from a very prestigious school and couldn't find a job. He was parking cars, and he couldn't get an apartment because he was making too little. So you got the two extremes. You got someone that's making too much. You got somebody who's making too little. And the interesting thing is they had one thing in common. They were both Latinos, and they wanted to stay in the Bronx where they had been raised. None of them live in the Bronx now. So that affordable housing is definitely an issue. But aside from the land trust aspects, which I think are very important and I definitely support, we also need to look at the housing aspect and how they do this. The ratio that they use for you to be able to get affordable housing, which is not affordable, they should change those signs. It should say affordable in parentheses for some. Because the bottom line is that the average income of the residents of the South Bronx, of this district, the poorest urban congressional district in the country, is $26,000 to $28,000.
Thank you. I hate to interrupt you, but we have 3 minutes and lots of questions left. I do want you to get
to 3 minutes only?
Yeah, yes.
You just started.
I know.
In regards to arts and culture, Julio, a majority of the creative workforce, meaning artists in all disciplines, are freelancers or seasonal workers. COVID-19 has resulted in a dramatic loss of income for them. What would you do to help creative workers overcome these challenges?
I think that, you know, this issue of the artists is something that also affects me a lot because people in my family are artists. And the fact is that I've helped many. We support a lot of this. And art is something that should be seen not as something separate that you go to once in a while, a museum, or you go see somebody perform. Art is part of our culture. One of the things, for example, you know that the whole level of hip hop in the Bronx, right? They got a museum, it's going to come up. But do you know the history of salsa? The history of salsa in the Bronx is amazing. It's not just about music. It's about, you know, Eddie Palmieri learned how to play piano on Prospect. You know that Rafael Hernandez, the most important music written in Puerto Rico, was done on Prospect Avenue. I mean, there's so much culture. Listen, I am hot on this topic. I would be finding any which way to bring people and bring resources down because artists in our community are the future, not just of art, but of culture. And culture then equals economic development.
Thank you.
Small businesses in our district were already hurting because of rent hikes, the influx of big box stores, and online sales. Now, with COVID and looting, they have fallen even further behind. What would you do to restart small business and promote entrepreneurship in our district?
Win or lose, one of the first things I would do is try to get rid of the present city council people who are there. Ask them, what did they do to work with the Small Business Congress, and why the Small Business Congress is so much against two of the members who are running right now as council people, because they didn't do anything. As a tenant, you have rights. You can't raise my rent. I got two-year lease, 1 year lease, and then if you want to throw me out, I still could go to court. But as a small businessman, you don't have rights. I'm a small businessman. I had to close my business years ago because when my 10-year lease was up, because they were building stuff like around Ostos, my rent went double. I told the landlord, I can't pay you double. So you know what? I had to close my store. And my store was a beacon for the kids in the South Bronx. The first guest house over here, 2 blocks away, the business. So the fact is that there are a lot of businesses here. Do you think right after this, the number of small businesses that are going to close is going to blow your mind? Now you add to that the gentrification on steroids that's taking place right around us. And every time that someone then builds another building and gives commercial space to a Rite Aid or to a Dunkin' Donuts, listen, the property value goes up, the bodeguero 2 blocks away, the shoemaker 5 blocks away. Guess what? They're going to be moved out. There's a plan in the city, folks, and the plan does not include us. So
thank you. We have to move on to the next question.
We've got less than a minute left. So questions. The next one is, how specifically would you provide teeth to the community-driven solutions that have been articulated over the years by some of the organizations hosting today and those that you may have engaged during your campaigning?
All of us, including all of your organizations, the bottom line is that until we don't deal with the issue of poverty, which has tentacles in all the other issues, we're not going to be able to do anything. So my teeth, my fists, my feet are all going to go into fighting to begin to address this issue of poverty, which is not crazy. I gave you several specific plans on how we can develop economic development almost immediately in areas like the South Bronx. As a businessman, I'm the only one, by the way. No other candidate is a small business person. I have 3 small businesses, all in the South Bronx.
Thank you.
I did
so
that
now
under a minute.
I have a quick response question for you. Please answer yes or no. Do you think drug use is a criminal justice concern?
Hi, that's a loaded question. Absolutely not. I think that it's not a criminal justice. I think it's an issue of social justice. It's an issue of poverty. My sister was an addict, and she wasn't, a criminal. It was just they had her on this program, and then after she wanted to get off drugs, she got on methadone. Methadone became a way to make money for people. She's on methadone for about 20 years. Give me a break. That wasn't about curing people. So, addiction is more than just, one issue. It's a lot of issues, and it's basically a sickness that has to be addressed.
Thanks. How will you use your leverage in the federal government to address the South Bronx's vulnerability to the impacts of climate change locally in our district?
One of the issues that people ask me a lot about that is the fact, what makes me different? Well, what makes me different, if you check out my background, is I'm able to work with everybody. The fact that I'm known for a book that I wrote, which is a true story, Fidel Castro coming to the Bronx, it wasn't a socialist, it wasn't a communist, it wasn't a Cuban that made that happen. It was a Republican, all pro-statehood, all millionaires, all opposite of what I am. How did I get them to give me the approval to write a press release to criticize Giuliani for disinviting him and Arafat, which eventually led for Fidel Castro coming to the Bronx, right? Because I know how to deal with different people. When I develop business, I don't care if you're pro-independence, I don't care if you're pro-statehood, I don't care. If we have one thing in common to help this community, then you know what? We can work together. And that's what we need to do. We need to find ways to be able to work together. And I think I'm the best person. I work for the federal government, state government, city government. I have businesses, and I raised 3 kids who are fantastically professional, all coming from the South Bronx. If I don't have the qualifications, you know what? Then they don't have to vote for me.
Julio, to wrap up our People's Candidate Forum today, how would you articulate a set of planning principles that will guide development that will serve to both preserve and grow the district? And how would you include the community in the adoption of those principles?
One of the things that I've always said was that I need to be elected to be effective. If you look at Job Corps, who brought that in 1980? If you look at the speed bumps on Walton Avenue, who brought that in? If you look at the Retired 21, who brought that in? If you look at the guest houses that are around 149th to 150th Street, who helped these people develop these businesses? I've been a person that have done things, and I believe that I am not a leader. People who led me, Evelyn Antonetti, Socorro Texidor, They let me. There's a lot of talent in our community. What I would do is my office is not going to be an office for a congressperson. It's going to be an office for organizers. We need to bring people in to help organize because the talent in our community is incredible, but it's not being tapped. So I get in. All I'm doing is I have a key, and I'm going to open that key, open that door, and everybody come on in. And how can we use the business of the Congress in any way we can? Because I'm not interested in a career. Coño, going 5 times to Puerto Rico every year. Why do I want to get into Congress? But I'll go in there and make so much noise. They're going to be so happy to get me out. You know why? Because they're going to listen. They're going to listen because I can deal with a redneck or I can deal with a leftist.
Thank you, Julio. One last thing. This is a yes or no answer. Before today, had you taken a pledge against taking money from big corporations like real estate developers and other special interests?
Listen, I didn't have to take a pledge. Everybody who knows me knows my campaign is the poorest. They didn't invite me to another forum because I didn't meet the threshold. But meanwhile, they don't see the stuff we're doing in the streets. Listen, Samelis, AOC, right? She gets this amount of money. You know what I get? My average is like $2 and $3. But you know what? I don't believe in raising money. I believe in raising consciousness. That's why I think we have an incredible chance of winning this.
Thank you, Julio.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your interest in serving as the next congressperson in District 15. The people of the district will make a decision on June 23rd. Be well and stay safe, Julio. Thank you.
Thank you. And I love all you guys, man. Keep on doing your fantastic work. No matter what happens, you got a resource here, okay?
Thank you.
Gracias.